This is an interview with Edward Levey at the Hampton Inn, Carrier Circle, Syracuse, January 17th, 2003. The interviewers are Michael Russert and Wayne Clark. It's approximately 10:30 a.m. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Edward Arthur Levey, March 27th, 1927, in New York City.
Okay. What was your pre-military service education?
I was in the New York State Guard when I was 17, and then when I started college, I was in the ROTC. But I was taking, I was only in college for half a year before I was 18, and then I went into service.
Okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
And when I was 17, I enlisted in the Air Force, and I was supposed to go to the Air Corps. I had all the physicals and examinations, but by the time I was 18, it was March 1945, and the war was, they could see the end of the war coming. They didn't need any more people in the Air Corps, and the Air Corps at that time was part of the Army. So when they finally called me in, I went into the Army, not into the Air Force.
Okay. Where was your basic training?
In Camp Rucker, Alabama, and then it's 13 weeks there, and then the last 4 weeks were in Camp Gordon, Georgia.
How did you find, did you have any encounters with local people being in New York, or was there any?
No, it was very friendly. I got along very well. There were a lot of Southerners in basic training, and I was 18 then, and at that time, during the war, they were drafting men who were 18, and then they were drafting men who were quite a bit older too. So there was a lot of men, 28 and 29, with us in basic training, and they were a lot of them were Southerners, but we got along just fine.
Okay. What kind of special training did you receive?
Just infantry.
Just infantry.
Infantry,
Okay.
yeah.
What unit were you assigned?
Overseas,
Yes.
The first unit I was assigned was the 508th MPs in Munich, Germany.
Okay. Did you receive any special training to become an MP?
Absolutely not.
Okay. When did you go overseas?
I went overseas in November 1945
And how did you go over?
on a Liberty ship.
Was it in convoy or?
No, the war was over. The Japanese war was still on when I was drafted, when I was taken, but the German war, European war, was finished in August. So.
Okay, what were your assignments when you were in occupied Germany then?
Well, I didn't stay in the MPs too long. My brother was wounded during the war. He was in the 94th Division, and I hadn't seen him in a number of years. And Christmas of 1945, I volunteered, being Jewish, I volunteered to work Christmas. There was 1 day on and 1 day off in the MPs. But he called me and he said he was going home soon. And we hadn't seen each other in 2 years, and he was wounded. So I went AWOL, and I went to see him. He was working in a military government in Stuttgart. So I hitchhiked to Stuttgart. When I got back, they understood why I went to see him, and they were very sympathetic. But they transferred me to a prison camp as a guard that was being set up in Wurzburg, Germany. And the MPs were supposed to be guards at prisons. This was a prison for American soldiers who were court-martialed. And the prison was being set up there. So I was transferred up there in January of 1946.
Could you explain your assignments and so on?
The prison was on a German Air Force base, and there wasn't any inmates there when I got there in 1946. It was practically full of just a muddy area, very flat, and they were building the stockades for the inmates.
You weren't at Giebelstadt, were you?
No, this was Wurzburg, Germany.
Wurzburg. Okay.
Wurzburg. And for the first week or so, we were just doing ordinary things, but then they brought in, the first group of men they brought in was 12 inmates who were going to be executed. But of course they never did execute them, but they brought in 12 men. And we were guards all around the barbed wire. And then they decided it would be a good idea to have one guard sitting with the prisoners. So they sent somebody in. It wasn't me, and the inmates just destroyed this person. You know, they had nothing to lose. They were condemned men. They're very serious crimes they committed while in service. And after a few weeks, they decided that prison wasn't safe, and meantime they had brought in more inmates from other prisons. One in St. Lo, France. The French wanted to get rid of, didn't want a prison there anymore. But our prison wasn't set up correctly. Men were escaping, so they got on a train and we brought all the inmates down to a prison in Marseille, France. And that was until they were able to construct the prison correctly and safely on the Air Force base. We were empty for a month or so, then they brought the inmates back. So it was, but in the meantime, I had been transferred to special services on the base in Wurzburg. I knew how to run a motion picture projector, and so they assigned me to special services, so I was no longer a guard, and I provided movies and sports equipment. I had to go to Frankfurt every few days to pick up more films and new films, and that was quite pleasant.
What were some of the favorites that
Oh, well,
you showed?
I forget what I showed, but you know, you had to keep on changing the reel. You know, it wasn't continuous.
Yes, right.
You know, and the guys would hoot and holler and say, "Let's get going," you know, and things like that. And the funny thing was, though, there was a transportation group of Negro soldiers in Wurzburg, and they came up to the camp, and I had to show a man attached to that outfit how to run the projector, because we didn't sit together. And after we showed the movies to the white soldiers, then the black soldiers saw theirs, run by a black projectionist, a very nice fellow, but that's the way it was in those days.
Did they have the same movies?
Same movie, yeah. They were in the same movie, but after we showed it to our men.
Okay. Were you, I realize this was after the war, but were you aware of the existence of the concentration camps?
Yes, when I was in Munich, we went up to Dachau to pick up German prisoners to bring them into Munich to clean up the place. And I went up to Dachau a few times, because that's, you know, every morning we would go up there, pick up these guys with the P on their back, you know, and I was quite aware of it, yeah. And being Jewish, of course, it was very emotional for me. But we didn't know that much about it, really, in those days. We didn't know the horror, the complete horror at that point. But I remember there were SS men stationed at Dachau that we would pick up. And I remember one was quite evasive. And I went over to him, and I took away from him a folded picture of Adolf Hitler. And I brought it back with me, and I donated it to a Holocaust museum in Spring Valley, New York. It was a beautiful portrait of that monster.
What did they do with these German prisoners that you brought back? Or were they?
Well, we'd have to guard them, but they were cleaning up. You know, so many areas were a mess, were bombed out. And Wurzburg was a completely destroyed city. Munich at least had some evidence of things that weren't destroyed. But they were picking things up and just cleaning up and doing the dirty work that they should have done.
Did you ever attend any USO shows at all while you were there? Or?
Gee, I don't think so. I can't recall or anything like that. No.
Whereabouts were you, and what was your reaction when you heard about Roosevelt passing on?
Well, I wasn't in the Army yet. I was in April. I didn't report for duty till May, but I was very saddened, of course.
How about when you heard about the atomic bombs being dropped on Japan?
Well, we were in basic training then. We were all set to go to the Pacific because they were training us to go to that area. They were gradually taking water away from us in basic training. And I could almost go a whole day without water at that time, I remember. I couldn't believe it would ever happen. But we knew we'd come out of this thing alive at that point, the war being over.
Okay. How do you think when did you leave military service?
I left in October 1946.
How do you think your service, do you think it changed or affected your life in any way?
I think it did, because slightly, and no regrets at all. I was very proud to be a soldier, and I'm very proud that I was a soldier, and served a very short time, and never was in danger of losing my life, never hit combat or anything like that. And but it did affect my life slightly. I was going to college before, and I was going. My wife and I were boyfriend and girlfriend at that time, and it just took a year and a half away from me, and I never could get back into studying again. I wanted to get on with my life, and I tried college when I came back, but it didn't suit me.
So did you use the GI Bill then?
I did use the GI Bill, yeah, when I came back, but I was, for some reason or other, I couldn't concentrate effectively to be a good student. So I quit that, and I went to work, and we got married at a very young age.
Did you ever use that 5220 clause?
Yes, I did, because I got out in October of 1946, and I didn't start college again until January, so for a few months there I was on the 5220 club. Yeah.
Okay. Did you join any veterans organizations on your?
I did.
No.
I didn't. I joined the AVC, I think it was called, the American Veterans Committee, and it didn't last long. And I don't like veterans organizations. I voted against the New York State bonus. I thought that was taking money out of one pocket and putting it into the other. And I don't think, being a veteran, I should be entitled to special privileges. I think it was an honor to serve, and I don't regret it, and it was important at that time that I served. So when the American Legion calls me up, or the Veterans of Foreign Wars, I've been solicited by them to join, and I just won't join. I was a member of the Jewish War Veterans for a short while, because my father-in-law was a veteran of World War I, and I stayed with him for a while, but I never pursued it. A very short time I was a member of the JWV.
Did you ever keep in contact with anyone?
Funny that you mention it, because computer-wise, a couple of years ago, I found a man that I was very close to in Germany, and he was from Pennsylvania, and now we're corresponding again. I hadn't seen him or heard of him in 45 years or so, and now we send each other Christmas cards, and we email each other every so often. But that's the only person I really contacted again.
Okay, well, thank you for your interview.
My pleasure.
Is there anything else that you think you'd like to add, or?
No,
About the trials, he would.
Oh, I did go to the Nuremberg Trials.
Oh, you
okay,
did?
good.
Yeah, in Passover of 1946, they allowed the Jewish soldiers to attend a service, and they allowed us. We all went to Nuremberg, and we had Passover services. And while there, I attended the Nuremberg Trials, and found that quite fascinating. Yeah, see those.
Did you go on a tour of the cells or anything? Or?
No, I just, witnessed the trials itself, with the things on, I think, different languages that they spoke and the translations.
How long were you there?
Just a couple of days. There was only one other Jewish soldier on in Wurzburg, so he and I took a jeep. And I remember we took a jeep from Wurzburg to Nuremberg, and they told us when we get to Nuremberg, take something out of the jeep so that you couldn't start. You know, you didn't start these cars with a key in those days. You just clicked it to the side. And because so many Russians were in Nuremberg that they were stealing our jeeps. So when we parked the jeep, we had to take something out of it. I remember in the motor and put it in our pocket.
Probably the distributor.
Yeah, a little cap of some sort. I remember that we had to remove because so we wouldn't lose our
Did
jeep.
you ever have any encounter with the Russians?
No, never really did. No, and we had we had a very interesting trip taking the prisoners from Wurzburg to Marseille. It was on a train, and we had I don't know, about 10 different cars. They were all set up for prisoners because on one, it's like a freight car almost, but at the end of each car was a barricade of. So there was a guard at each end of the car, and you couldn't touch the inmates. They were inside, and there wasn't a bathroom in the car for the inmates. So there was a little like a telephone booth with a hole in it, and they would use that. And when we got to Marseille, there was one inmate missing from one prisoner was missing. He was missing from the car that I was assigned to guard. And he must have gotten out through that hole. And they quizzed us, you know, but we don't know how he got away. But they were very, a great deal of initiative, those inmates. They knew what they were doing. But they didn't do anything. They just quizzed us, did we see him? Because every time the train stopped, one man got out on one side, the other fellow on the other end of the car got out on the other side, just to be sure, and watching underneath, of course, but he escaped. And then we had the hangman, the European hangman station at Wurzburg prison. He was the hangman for Europe. He was a master sergeant, and he had a Native American Indian as his helper, and all he did was. He didn't do anything else, as far as I know, but hang people. But the only ones I think he ever hung were the Germans. But that was, we had the gallows at Wurzburg. They built the gallows.
But they never used them, you said?
Not for Americans.
Not for
our boys. No. But that was. But you got used to it, you know. It was a big deal. Gallows, you know. I don't know. You accepted things so differently when you're in the service. Everything that happened, you just accepted. So that was my Army experience.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Great.